While President Donald Trump and the Republican Party continue to fearmonger about migrant caravans crossing into the United States through the southern border, Canadians might have to worry about their southern border. Now, it turns out that recently there have been caravans of Americans that have been making their way across the U.S. Into Canada to get cheaper prescription drugs. Now, apparently, insulin is one of the bigger ones that these caravans tend to come into the country for. Now, this is Quinn Nystrom, who is one of these members. She's a diabetic, and she has been traveling with a lot of other people from Minnesota and has been documenting her journey. She said, quote, "We're on a caravan to Canada because the USA charges astronomical prices for insulin that most people can't afford." Now, Nystrom was among a group of Minnesotans who had made the 600-mile journey to Fort Frances, Ontario, where she said insulin can be bought for a tenth of what it costs in the United States. A tenth. Wow. Now, the caravan was organized as part of a campaign launched under the banner Insulin For All. And basically, their whole purpose is to call for the U.S. government to regulate the cost of this and other life-saving drugs and make medication affordable for anybody who needs it. I mean, look, the reality for millions of Americans is that they have their drugs that are completely unaffordable. I mean, you have people that are launching GoFundMe campaigns in order to afford insulin. Well, what happens if they don't meet their quota, their goal? They don't get medication. A lot of people have to ration their medication for months, and sometimes they end up dying. I think I read a story the other day where there was somebody who had seizure medication, and they couldn't afford it. They were rationing it. Okay, maybe I'll get it next month. Had a seizure in the shower, died. This is what happens in this country, in the wealthiest country in the world. Why? Why? Now, look, let me go into some of the numbers here. Now, according to data from Truven Health Analytics, the price of insulin in America has skyrocketed more than 1,100%. Despite the cost of production for a vial of analog insulin costing less than $10. They make it for $10, they mark it up, and they sell it. That is devastating. And it's no wonder people go to Canada in order to buy the same drug, same manufacturer. It's just cheaper. And now you might be wondering, wait, how's that possible? If it's the same drug, same manufacturer, how is it cheaper in Canada than it is here? Well, because in America, we allow pharmaceutical companies to get away with charging whatever they want. It's that laissez-faire, free market. Well, this is what happens in a completely free market. They jack up the prices so they can make an extra buck. Who cares if you die? It's your money or your life. And what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Now, and look, this is the real caravan we should worry about. Not about illegal, immigration, undocumented immigrants coming to the border, whatever. No, we should worry about the numerous amount of people that have to leave the country and go to other countries to get health care and life-saving drugs because it's so expensive here in America. And now, a recently released report ordered by Representative Elijah Cummings, who was part of the Oversight Committee, also found that millions of Americans who rely on insulin were paying up to 92% more than patients in other countries. Now, posting a photo of a Walgreens pharmacy store in on the caravan's journey to Canada, Nystrom wrote that the group, quote, could have ended our caravan to Canada in 5 minutes, but unfortunately, they charge $300 for insulin, so we will travel another 5 hours north so that we will only have to pay $30 for a vial of insulin. Now, another caravan member, Elijah Greenseed, who joined the caravan on behalf of her 13-year-old daughter, who lives with type 1 diabetes, told Newsweek that she first realized just how vast the difference was between the cost of insulin in the U.S. when compared with Canada while on a family vacation, when her daughter needed an emergency supply. She said her family has also traveled to other parts of the world and consistently found that medication their daughter needs for a fraction of what it costs in the US. Whereas in the US, she said 5 insulin pens might cost $700. In Canada, purchasing the same amount cost her family just $65. In Italy, it was $61. In Greece, $51. And in Taiwan, $40. You know why? Because these governments don't have, or these places don't have a government that is beholden to pharmaceutical companies and special interests. Now, Green said in the United States, the exorbitant cost of insulin has been a, quote, big economic burden on her family, with both her and her spouse being small business owners. Now, the differences between the United States and the world are even more stark. In Canada, not only was the cost of insulin lower, but actually getting access to the drug was easier. Well, now wait a minute here. It's easier to get insulin and it's cheaper than it is in America. But I don't understand. I thought Canada had a socialist single-payer system. I mean, it's like communism up there. I don't understand. How could things be so much better? Well, let me explain how much better they are. Now, this is an example of what it's like to try to get insulin here in the United States. And this is according to Green said, quote, this year it took me 15 phone calls to a variety of parts of the healthcare system over 11 days before I could get my daughter's insulin refilled. And this is exactly the same insulin we've been getting for many years. But in Canada, you just walk in and you buy it. It's literally just as easy as, walking up to the pharmacy counter and asking for what you need. Well, that's the difference. She also said, it definitely illustrated for me how wrong it is that we're paying the prices that we're paying. It just doesn't have to be like that. It's frustrating. Well, we all feel your frustration. I mean, 15 calls, 11 days of waiting. Is this what you call a patient-centered healthcare? Or maybe we've been mishearing it all along. Maybe it's not that they're saying patient-centered healthcare. Maybe they're saying patients-centered healthcare. As in, sit down, wait, be patient, and eventually we'll help you after charging you the maximum that we can. That sounds about right. Look, this is why we need a single-payer healthcare system. Like what Canada has, but better. You know why? Because that would actually solve these problems. Canada, look, they have ways of keeping the price of prescription drugs down, and they end up having better outcomes in healthcare. Oh, but Jeff, what about the people who come to the United States from Canada for treatment? Well, those people, they tend to come for electives or to bypass some of the waiting times for non-life-threatening conditions. So, yes, there is a bit of medical tourism from Canada. There's also a lot of medical tourism from America to Canada and to Mexico. So, look, they have a better system than we do when it comes to people who are not wealthy. Now, if you're a wealthy person, then why would you ever go to another country? You can afford everything here, not a problem. You don't get bankrupted from cancer. You don't get bankrupted from, these conditions, right? But if you're a regular person, if you're a working person in America, you do, and it happens all the time. So the people that you see railing against single payer, the pundits, the people on television that are telling you, oh, no, we've got to stay with this system. We need to stay with private insurance because it's better. Those are the people who can afford to pay for private insurance. They're not regular people, and they don't understand what it's like. Now, another quote here from one of these Caravan members. Actually, we'll go back to Green said, quote, there's a little bit of sense of relief in knowing that only 5 hours away we can drive to Canada and easily get insulin. But it's a little crazy to rely on another country. And she said, quote, heading north to Canada for medicine is obviously not the solution to this problem. It's really a matter of making broader changes to the system. Like, for example, allowing us to import cheaper drugs from Canada. That's something that Donald Trump had promised to do. Has Donald Trump done that? Has he put forward any sort of, push, right? Because he can't put forward legislation, but has he leaned on Republicans in the Senate to push for doing that, right? Because that's really the barrier there. House Democrats could put forward a piece of legislation. They could call it bipartisan and say, yes, we will allow these people to import these cheaper drugs from other countries, from Canada, and so we can alleviate this problem. Now, they haven't put anything forward. Why? It's because, I mentioned that before, the drug companies kind of run the place. And not only that, but lowering the prescription drug prices by allowing cheaper drugs from Canada, we could also implement a single-payer healthcare system that could negotiate with drug makers in order to reduce costs. If we don't do those things, then we're not solving the problem. Anything else is basically a Band-Aid. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.